Expecting the unexpected. I'm Senator Ginny Burdick, Senate Majority Leader from Oregon, and my initial information was that it started at 4:30, so I apologize. I was actually early. Before we begin the program, I have a brief announcement. Our session today will be streamed live on the web with the help of our friends at the Ohio Channel. And welcome to those of you who are viewing our program online. And a recording of this session also will be made available on the Ohio Channel website for viewing on demand after the meeting. Since the camera will be live throughout the session, I'd like to remind all of our panelists to please speak into the microphones. For those of you in the audience, if you would like to ask a question at the end of the program, please use the standing microphones and state your name and the state you're from when asking your question. Legislatures likely have more than their share of unexpected events, as I suspect all of us know. Protesters at the Capitol, a natural disaster or security threats, sudden special sessions, and legislative staff need to be prepared when the unexpected happens. Today we'll hear about some real events and learn how staff prepared for, dealt with, or found solutions for unexpected situations. And I'm going to start off with a little bit about myself. I've done public relations, crisis management in my private life for about 20 years. And when I got elected to the legislature, I found that those skills were actually quite transferable. Do we have the slide? Am I supposed to do something here? Anyway, I have been doing crisis management, and there are just a couple of fundamental principles that I want to just kind of set the stage for here. We've all seen this cartoon, I'm sure. It's famous Gary Larson cartoon. I have it on a coffee cup. That's a crisis clinic on fire, headed down a waterfall. And one of the first fundamentals of crisis management or anything unexpected is to properly identify the crisis. For example, if there's somebody in the crisis clinic, that's obviously your main crisis that you need to get a team together and deal with as soon as possible. That's your first priority. However, if there's nobody in the clinic and there's an investor who's just on the verge of signing papers for another crisis clinic, you'll probably want to reach out to that person very quickly. Because one of the fundamentals of crisis management or any unexpected event is to tell your own story, to get out there first with your own story, and don't let the story be told on you, and to eliminate the element of surprise wherever you can. One of the most important things about preparing for any crisis is preparation. And that starts with, and I know you don't need to hear another good reason for bipartisanship, but that starts with relationship building. And if you have strong relationships between your chambers, with the governor, in your workplace, you have a much better chance of successfully navigating through the unexpected. And I can't emphasize that enough. And I do want to put in a pitch for NCSL's civility training, which we have been through in Oregon. It made a difference, and I recommend that for everyone. Because when a crisis happens, you need to get a team together very quickly, and you need to get past any irritations you might have with people, because you've got to focus on how to navigate your way successfully through the unexpected. So the other elements that quickly, and this is part of a 2-hour workshop I give, so I'll be very brief, but you really need to focus on getting a good story and then telling it, and getting out there with communication. Communication is key. And when it comes to identifying a crisis, you may have a situation where maybe there's a scandal or something happens in your building. If you properly identify it, you may decide that it could be any number of crises. You might be worried about a bad editorial that would reflect badly on your caucus or your or your chamber, but it also might be, there might be one particular legislator that you're counting on for a key vote, and maybe that person is where you ought to focus your attention. So I look forward. I've heard of a few things from our panelists. It's a very knowledgeable panel here, and we're very pleased to have them. So I'll introduce them briefly, but please take a look at their full biographies, which are available on the NCSL Legislative Summit website, along with the other handouts for this session. So, our first speaker is Anthony Steve Pike. Colonel Pike was appointed as Chief of the Commonwealth of Virginia Division of Capitol Police in Richmond on October 10th, 2011. As Chief, he is responsible for the division's sworn and support personnel serving the Capitol community of the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of Virginia's government, its employees, and visitors. Prior to his appointment, he served as the Assistant Chief for the Division of Capitol Police. Colonel Pike, a native of Wythe County, Wythe County, I pronounce his name, but not his county, began his law enforcement career in 1988. Colonel Pike served in the United States Army and was selected as the honor graduate after attending the basic non-commissioned officer course. Colonel Pike is a graduate of the 227th session of the FBI National Academy, the 64th session of the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Development Seminar, Northwestern University for Public Safety Executive Management Program, and the Commonwealth Management Institute. Welcome, Colonel Pike.
Thank you, Senator, for that introduction, and I appreciate having the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon and talk about a few of the experiences that we've had in Virginia at our Capitol since I've been there as the police chief, and I will always say that you can always expect the unexpected to occur when you're dealing with large groups of people that are visiting our seats of government. I'd like to state that people are very passionate these days about legislation and bills that are coming in and out of the sessions that we see. And as you can see in this slide, emotions can boil over, and these can occur in tight places and spaces within your complex. And trying to be open and communicate with your visitors and staff, have a lot of pre-planning communication up front with the leadership and legislative members to make sure that if something occurs, that everybody's on the same sheet of music and kind of deal with those scenarios as they unfold. But when we have groups of folks come to our Capitol, we usually reach out to them, especially if they get a permit to have a protest. We try to reach out to them several days, if not a week, before their event. We sit down with the group leaders. We go through the rules and the do's and don'ts of the complex, try to be open and transparent. A lot of people have never been there before, never had a permit for a demonstration, try to work through those to alleviate any matters that may arise. But sometimes, again, when you have large crowds, 500, 1,000 people, emotions can get carried away. Back in 2012, we had a lot of demonstrations at our Capitol, not unlike what happens in your states at your Capitol complexes. And we have a section that you're allowed to protest, and you're not allowed to be on our portico of our Capitol, which happened this day. And as a result of permit violations and so forth, we ended up arresting a number of people. And so an issue that came out of this, the expect the unexpected, that I didn't anticipate would occur. Within a few days after this, I shared this email that was sent from my office to the local prosecutor, and it said, subject style weekly recommended article from me, and there's a link to the article, and the message that I purportedly sent to the prosecutor was, we're getting clobbered in the court of public perception, let's end all this and drop the charges. Of course, I did not send this email. So the prosecutor responded back to this email, and of course I got that response back, and when I saw it, I thought, what in the world is going on? I didn't send this email, so I immediately picked up the phone and called him, and it was unfortunate that cyber is something that you should expect is a potential issue that comes up when you may have a mass arrest or other events that happen at your complex. So we pursued this as a result of this email that went, and so it's just something that I learned, and I try to prepare my staff and legislative staff that when you have high-profile events or legislation that's very contentious or draws large crowds, it's a possibility of something like this happening. This is one of the expect the unexpected that happened to me that I've shared with people, that there's not a leadership book that you can pull off the shelf to deal with this, and I'll talk real quickly. The canine there in the image is one of, I have 3 explosive bomb dogs. That dog there is named Spike. He'd been with our organization a little over 2 years. He had been with the Marine Corps and served in the Marine Corps over in Afghanistan as an explosive detection dog. One morning I came into the office and I got a phone call about a mother in Louisiana who was desperately trying to locate this dog for her son, who's Jared Heine, who's kneeling down. Jared had been the Marine who had been assigned to Spike his whole time when he was in the Marine Corps, and on one of their last missions, they'd encountered an IED, an explosion had occurred. They'd gotten separated, and Jared had been hospitalized, the dog had been taken away, and as a result of that, he was told that upon his release from the hospital and discharge from the Marine Corps, he would be able to get his beloved dog back that he'd had since a puppy through the training. Well, that didn't happen. And when he tried to locate the dog, they would not tell him what law enforcement agency was in possession of Spike, and his mother had reached out through Facebook. And so for me, I had a canine handler, Laura Taylor, who had been partners with this dog for over 2 years. And so we had a reunion on the steps of our Capitol. I made a very tough decision, but the right decision, to retire Spike and send him back with the Marine. So it was a tough day. So if you have canines at your Capitol complexes, it's something that potentially could happen. That call. Real quick, anybody in here from West Virginia? Nobody from West Virginia. A few months ago, if you remember, the Secretary of Health and Human Services was from DC, was down at their Capitol, and was having a press conference, and there was a reporter that was asking a lot of questions, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but the reporter was arrested. And during the night, this went viral over the internet, and the next morning my secretary came in. My inbox was filled up with emails. I'm the chief of Virginia, and these were angry at West Virginia. So I got a lot of emails from upset citizens from across the United States about me arresting the reporter, which we didn't do, and so it was something that took my staff off guard. I did have one very horrible voicemail that was left on my secretary's phone that would be horrible if I played it. So just preparing your staff for things like this that can happen, and people were so emotional over that issue when it came up that they left off the first words west and targeted Virginia. And so I got quite a few emails and responded to all of those folks. Took up a little time to do that, but took care of that along the way. And then finally, we've had large groups gather around some of the monuments near our Capitol and complex, and we always think about, things getting disrupted. And on this particular day, when we had this one protest, we had folks from all over the country show up, several thousand people. And one of the things that took us off guard, the heat index that day got up to 105, 108 degrees. So the real problem we had was a lot of medical issues that arose out of this. So, we think about the physical planning that we go through thinking about protests and everything, but you have medical calls that need to be thought about through your planning. So, my takeaway to all this is plan a lot up front. I always tell my staff when I have them involved, we take time after these events to debrief from the lowest level all the way up. We bring everybody in a room, we talk through the event, because I tell my staff I take defeats or deficiencies as victories, because it allows us, when we plan for the next event, to succeed and do them much better than the previous one. So that's just a small best practice that we do in our Capitol. So thank you for having the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Colonel. Our next speaker is Peter Capri, Leone. Peter has been with the North Carolina General Assembly since October of '86. Before his employment with NCGA, he worked with Public Systems Associates from 1983 until 1986. Peter became the Information Systems Division Director in May of 2017. Before that, he was the Infrastructure Manager and the Business Applications Manager, and served as the IT staff member for legislative committees. He received his BA in Political Science from the University of Minnesota and his MA from North Carolina State University. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Senator. Expect the unexpected. Well, as the Senator said, the most important thing is getting that message out there, making sure that what you're saying is correct. Oh, shoot. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. That's not right. There. That's a little better. Of course, are we ready? Well, session. We better be ready for regular session, for special sessions and special sessions and special sessions. We had a special session in December of 2016. So that was how much fun we had last year. And of course, redistricting. I think there was a redistricting session right down the hall. We started redistricting in 2011, and gee, lo and behold, we're going to be doing it again in 2017, and we did it in 2016. Legislature thought we were going to have a chance to get it done by November 15th. The courts had a different idea, and we now are going to be ready to have our plans drawn by September 1. Well, it was Ben Franklin who said, our new Constitution is now established and has an appearance that promises permanency. But in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Well, I say that in the legislature, nothing can be certain except the first day of session, because they're coming back that day. It doesn't change. You can't beg for them to change, so you better be ready. I don't think that his wife was actually expecting that to happen when they went to that hotel for the winter. Are you really ready? Well, cyber attacks, virus attacks. As we all know, denial of services can hit your computer center. You can't get information in and out. You need to be ready. You need to have your perimeter protections in place. You have to know what your business looks like going out to the internet and what your applications do inside your building and what your users do when they leave your building to go to all the wonderful websites that are out there today. Ransomware, as we all know, is the WannaCry that came out a few months ago that hit the Europe hospitals and data centers over there. We were lucky in the United States; it didn't really happen as bad there, But with ransomware, of course, as you all know, they lock your files, and then they say for like a few $100 or a couple $1,000, we'll give you that key to get your files back. Well, if you have a lot of files, that could cost a lot of money. But to be prepared you're expecting it. But it's unexpected when it happens, of course, and you've got to have your backup tapes in place or your disks or however you do your backup so you can restore to a point, hopefully, where you can become whole again and not have to be ransomed or bribed to get your data back. We are ready. Well, we have great plans. We're going to do Windows 10 and Office 2016 and deploy those this year. New phone upgrade, new emergency notification system, all these great ideas. And we have our plan set. We're going to start them October 1st. Wait, they're going into session. Can't do it then. Well, we're going to do it. We'll hold off. We'll do it. We'll start in September. Yeah, can't do that either. So you got to be flexible. We know we're ready to go. And there was a German general that said, and I have to read this here. He said, no battle plan, he cleverly noted, survives contact with the enemy. Well, in my case, no strategic plan survives contact with the legislature. You've got to be prepared. You've got to be ready to expect that things are going to happen, that you're going to get called by the governor to come back into session, or they'll call themselves back into session, and you might have a special session one right after another, or you're going to be drawing districts for the House and Senate in September. Oh, and of course, if you want to cross these, that would be a little unexpected too. Can't be ready. Things you can't be ready for. Things you just don't think are going to happen. Like someone at 11:45 at night during a budget session get a phone call, gee, the voting system isn't working right. The PC at the speaker's podium is off. Well, how in the heck can that be? It's put away. You really only can shut it off if the power goes off or if you press the off button. Don't know what happened. But 11:45 at night, we get a call over there, and we got to get this thing back up and running. So you're standing in front of 120 legislators. That's really fun. Their staff, media, because it's a 2-day reading for the budget bill, so they're going to get it done right before midnight. Then they're going to come back at 12:05 and pass it. Great. So you get the system back up. Everybody's asking you what's going to happen. And you're just saying, well, I just can't tell you what happened, but we'll get her back. And then you find out, thank God they didn't have the votes. And they adjourned. We were saved. Or they're going to tell you that they're going to shut down the power in your building because a breaker went bad. And your emergency power actually goes through the same breaker. So you're not going to have any power for your data center, secondary data center that's across the street. So you do all this planning, you say, okay, it's going to go off at 8 o'clock. Well, how long are you going to be down? How long is the building going to be without power? Well, yeah, we really can't tell you that. Okay, well, that's really good. So we figured, okay, we're going to shut our systems down. You just can't shut off a laptop or a PC. You got to bring the system down gentle so you can actually bring it back so these folks can work again. We had it all planned. I tell them, okay, we're going to shut it down about 7:15, takes about an hour. We negotiated some time to get the building shut down, lengthened or shortened a bit. Well, I get a call about 6:30 at night. Yeah, we can't send email. Oh, really? Well, my guys had decided to shut the system down a little bit earlier than anticipated. I'm thinking, okay, that's really great. We'll just bring that thing back up. Not a big deal. Then, oh, crap, we can't print. Oops. Well, our lone print server was located in that data center too. Well, long story short, we did get it up. And as it turned out, on our backup battery system for that data center, we had 3 minutes left when the building power came back on. It only lasted 15 minutes. We wouldn't have had to do anything, but we expected to be down longer. Unexpectedly, we shut the system down sooner than we should have. Thank God everything worked out. Subpoenas. Yeah, well, they're going to come in public records requests or subpoenas for various things. You expect them, but what you don't expect is a vast amount of data that they ask for, and we have a ton of it, as you can imagine, and or who they're going to want that data from. So you have to be ready for it. Your team has to have the proper tools in place for it. Your staff has to be skilled. And you have to go through, of course, all the redactions and all the confidentiality that can't be released, the talk between lawyers, of course, and staff. That's important. And then my one favorite one is, and I'm actually amazed that I'm standing here today before you, is that they were having a caucus meeting, and they went to a room where there were approximately 60 microphones. Well, we have precautions in place where if you don't press this button, nothing can be heard. And we made sure that because we cut some wires that were in a room, and we made sure stuff didn't happen. But our press room, they wanted to hear it live because our internet feed was delayed by maybe 10 seconds or so. And we said, well, no, that's not going to happen, so we're going to cut all those wires. You can listen on the internet like everybody else can. You're not that special. Well, one of the chair of the caucus chair said, so, Peter, you swear on your mother's life that nothing can be heard on here? Because they had to use the mics to speak to a large room and a lot of people in the room. I said, I can do you one better. My mom's dead. I can swear on her grave. Nothing's going to happen. I get back to my office not more than 10 minutes later. A reporter from the press room tweeted something or Facebooked it, whatever she did. Came right out of that caucus room. Oh, my God. Well, you couldn't have seen anybody pack up their office faster than me. I was nervous as heck. Well, as it turned out, long story, again, short, is that there was a wire that was run, a hot wire from that room across the street to the press room in 1983. I had no clue. You know what we did right after that? We cut every wire in that room, and the only way they can listen now is via the internet. So, you can expect things to happen, but unexpectedly, of course, no matter how well you're prepared. To get the message out was, thank God that saved my job, was, I really, really didn't know that, and that's the truth, and you could prove it. So that's the good news. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our final speaker today is Raoul Burciaga. Raoul worked for 15 years in the administration of federal healthcare programs. Opting for a new career, he attended the University of New Mexico School of Law and upon graduation joined the New Mexico Legislative Council Service as a staff attorney in July 2000. He served as the Assistant Director for Drafting Services from 2004 until 2010 when he became Director. As Legislative Council Service Director, Burciaga has primary responsibility for administration of the office, the nonpartisan drafting, legal, and research agency of the New Mexico Legislature. Additionally, he is responsible for the control, care, custody, and maintenance of the state capitol, Capitol North, Capitol's parking structure, and grounds. Burciaga has been active with NCSL since 2001 and is currently the staff chair of NCSL's Executive Committee and Legislative Staff Coordinating Committee. Welcome, Raoul.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. So in New Mexico, we have, well, I guess you can call it open carry, which means that there are no licensing or training requirements if somebody wants to carry a weapon. And then in 2003, New Mexico passed a concealed carry law, which allowed people over the age of 21 to carry loaded, concealed handguns if they take a training course and pass a criminal background check. And concealed carry does not apply to the schools or the courts. But people can conceal carry in the state capitol. So about 10 years later, 2012, 13, and 14, a number of legislators really felt like they wanted to ban or limit weapons from the Capitol, but none of those efforts were successful. There were a lot of protests during that time. They were both in favor of and in opposition to the proposed legislation to ban or limit weapons. And as I mentioned, well, I hadn't mentioned, the New Mexico Capitol is open in the broadest sense of the word. We don't have any metal detectors. We do not have armed guards or law enforcement. The only exception is that during session, the state police are there and they have jurisdiction over the Capitol in the event of an emergency. We have them there almost 24 hours a day. But our sessions are short, 60 days or 30 days. So the rest of the year, we do not have law enforcement or armed guards. And there is no rule, no policy, and no law against carrying weapons in the state capitol. So with few exceptions, there's easy access to the legislators, to their offices, committee rooms, the galleries above, and the area immediately adjacent to the House and Senate chambers. So with the efforts to try to limit or ban weapons, we had a lot of protesters show up at the Capitol, and they were well armed. Open carry, concealed carry, long weapons. It was quite a spectacle, and it really scared the heck out of a lot of people. Legislators, staff, constituents, children, other protesters. It was my worst nightmare, that we would have a problem, something would happen, tempers got out of hand. People would carry guns inside the Capitol. They would sit in the House or Senate, in the galleries above the House or Senate chambers. They were in committee rooms, and they often were lined up waiting to get inside either the gallery or one of the committee rooms. Additionally, there was a large number of protesters roaming around the perimeter of the Capitol. It's an open concourse that completely circles what we call the roundhouse, because our Capitol is shaped like a round building. It is a round building. Within hours, people were streaming into my office because, as the senator mentioned, one of the things that has been delegated to me is the care, custody, and maintenance of the state capitol. And they told me I had to do something about this. Unfortunately, I can't take unilateral action. I couldn't just ban them. I couldn't keep them out. That really is up to the legislature itself or the legislative council. So we met with the state police and our security guards, who technically are not, they're neither armed nor licensed, about what we could do. And believe it or not, what we came up with was just a policy, unwritten at that point, and we had state police stationed at both entrances to the Capitol, and they asked people who were carrying long guns, long weapons in, to not bring them in, to leave them outside, to leave them in their vehicles, but not to bring them inside. Surprisingly, they agreed. Now, part of that may not make sense, the idea that, okay, you're not bringing long weapons, but you can open carry or conceal carry a pistol, be holstered and the like. But it worked. It made a difference. It made some people feel a little bit better that people were not toting these long guns. And everyone agreed. Nobody objected or refused to comply with it. So it worked fairly well. Now, the other thing we did is that we already had a fairly sophisticated surveillance system, and our security staff and state police watched very closely from numerous vantage points. We probably have well over 200 or 300 cameras throughout the Capitol. And most of them, a lot of people don't know where those cameras are, which is a good thing. So really, it was more of an effort to find a compromise than an absolute yes, you can, or no, you can't approach. We have a similar situation with when we have protests. We allow them to protest anywhere outside on the concourse, as long as they let us know and as long as they keep the entrance or exit to the Capitol open. And people agree. Now, a lot of them like to carry signs, and we tell them, you can carry signs outside, but you can't bring them inside. And again, surprisingly, the people oblige. And once in a while, they'll ask why, and we just say, well, we want you to make sure that nobody tries to pull that out of your hands, use it as a weapon. Plus, they can block the cameras that we have, the security cameras. And surprisingly, people said, okay, and they left them outside. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that it was an effort to find some little compromise. It's a minor thing. We have a beautiful Capitol in New Mexico. We have a lot of art inside of it. And it's open, as I said, no metal detectors. People can come in and out as they like. But it was just talking to the protesters and making sure that our guards and state police were aware of what was happening, and it actually worked quite well. We also had one incident where a gentleman came and was carrying some weapons, but also a camera, and he proceeded to record whatever happened to him as he walked in. Of course, we were a little concerned because usually, and there was no session during this time, it was during the summer, he walked in with a gun and a camera. And so he's taking a picture of everybody who's coming up and asking him what he's doing. We did not have the state police there at the time. It was just our security staff. They asked him what he was doing there, and he said, I just want to film. I want to see what you guys are going to ask me. Well, are you here for any kind of official business? Are you looking for anybody in particular? And he said, no, I just want to see what happens. And he did. He he recorded on his phone what happened to him. And then he posted it on YouTube and actually got a little bit of national attention of him walking around the Capitol with his guns. But we were very respectful. We had our cameras. We were watching him. Everybody was alerted, and things were fine. So the other thing we've done, and as was mentioned earlier, there is a lot of passion when it comes to some issues. Obviously, gun legislation is a big one, excuse me, but we've had other types of bills that have brought out a lot of people. Obviously, something like the death penalty. The death penalty was repealed in New Mexico in the early 2000s, and we had a large number of protesters throughout the Capitol. Nobody was carrying guns, or that we knew of, but that wasn't the issue. And things worked well. We were able to respond to it. We had problems when there was a bill to outlaw cockfighting. New Mexico was one of the last 2 states to outlaw cockfighting, and you would be surprised at the number of people who showed up in opposition to and in favor of retaining cockfighting. We even had a situation where one very, very unpopular cabinet secretary whose nomination as secretary had not been confirmed in almost 6 years was finally given a hearing. And we had to have the hearing in one of the chambers because there were so many people there to speak in support of her and in opposition to her. And again, it was just making sure everybody calmed down, had the people on the pro side on one entrance to the chambers, those in opposition, those in support in one place, those in opposition in another place, and each one, they just took turns talking, and it worked out. So we've continued, and I want to reemphasize what was said earlier. A lot of this is about communication and understanding that allowed us to tame things down a little bit, if you will. We've continued to improve our surveillance system. We have now done a lot of active shooter training for legislative staff. We do tabletop exercises with first responders from numerous entities, our security guards, state police, local police, the sheriffs, fire department, health departments, paramedics, hospitals, emergency rooms, to walk through the process of what needs to be done in an emergency, in a life or safety situation. As was mentioned earlier, this is really about establishing relationships with all of these people. I've taken a couple of FEMA courses, and I passed them, so I know what I'm supposed to do if something happens. But the first thing is I know I'm not in charge. We get somebody with a lot more experience than me to do that. So really, the problem the issue I mentioned earlier, the problem was not with the show of people carrying guns. The problem is really with the unknown. It's not what you know that should scare you, it's what you don't know. So it's important for you to know what your plan is in the case of an emergency. Know with whom to train and coordinate. Know what your building's safety procedures are. Review videos that are developed by safety agencies, public safety agencies that provide advice and recommendations for emergency situations. Basically, be ready. We have panic buttons. We also have a notification system for text, email, or phones in case of any kind of emergency, and that has worked really well. Except when we tested it, our building services staff forgot to post in the text, "This is a test." And so when the text went out, fortunately it was not during session, but when the text went out that said, "Please evacuate the building immediately," everybody did. It was kind of fun. It was kind of funny. People got a break for about 15, 20 minutes as everybody scattered and was wondering what the heck is going on. But again, it was just a test. The last thing I'll mention is that we've had a couple of other situations that didn't involve any kind of violence, but in one case, we had a pipe that was exposed on the roof, and this was in the middle of December. It got incredibly cold, and the pipe burst and let water throughout the building. It's only a 4-story building, but it just went everywhere. And so we were able to evacuate and get that taken care of. Another time, we had a special session coming up for capital outlay. It was simply for capital outlay. There was only one bill that was going to be considered, and everybody was expecting that we would be done in one day. And we were there, we were ready. All of the bills had been drafted, they had been printed. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning. The session was going to start, the special session was going to start at 12 noon, and at 9:05, the lights went out. And we have some emergency lighting in the hallways, in the public areas, and certain areas because of the rotunda is fairly well lit. People could get around. But I immediately had the Senate Majority Leader call me and say, "What's going on?" And he was on his way in, but he had just heard about the power failure. And I said, "We have already contacted state printing. We have some of our IT equipment on the backup generator. We can keep going possibly for 18 hours if we need to. We've contacted state printing about printing the bills, amendments or the like. We have computers on battery power. We're ready to go." I said, and there is enough lighting in the chambers to keep going, and maybe a couple of committee rooms, but what I will tell you is that most of the offices are pitch black because we don't have light, and a lot of the offices are without windows. And I said, so a lot of the offices cannot be used. And he said, "That's a good thing. That's okay." Fortunately, the power came back on. It was a transformer that had gone down. Power came back on, and we were ready. But it really has been in our office about just simply being ready and taking the time to do this. In fact, when I return, I go back to the office on Monday and Tuesday. We're having an off-site training session that will involve a number of first responders from around Santa Fe, just to make sure that we're ready if we have an emergency. So again, it's not what you know that should scare you, it's what you don't know. And to get some of that's to not be so scared, I think you just simply need to talk to people, establish relationships with first responders, and be ready. Thank you all very much.
And thank you to our panel. As I was listening to New Mexico, I thought, this is Oregon. Except in Oregon, we, in our capital, people can open carry loaded long guns, AR-15s and the like, if they have a concealed handgun license, ironically enough. So we've had to deal with that, and probably more distressing in many ways were some of the demonstrations that we had that didn't involve firearms, that were very disruptive in the gallery, people acting very threatening even though they weren't armed. And in Oregon, we use, every time something like that happens, a major event, we get together with the state police and with the building management and with our lawyers and our HR people and really try to figure out how we can learn as we go down the road. In the Senate now, we have a protocol. If things reach a point in the gallery where we feel that there are threats, we have a protocol, where to go, at what point to leave, who communicates with both the caucuses, et cetera. So I wanted to see if any of our panelists might have some further insight on resources and maybe techniques for preparing for the unexpected, even though you don't know what it's going to be.
And some of you may have been in the previous presentation we did earlier, but one of the things I shared with the group, and I'd like to share with the folks in here, and this is free, so I hope you take advantage of it because that's always a good thing. But DHS in Virginia, we brought in DHS. They have a assessment team that you can bring in, and they'll do this assessment of your facilities. And what's great about that, as we did the assessment of our Capitol security assessment, they compared our Capitol at the time against 9 other capitals in the country. For security reasons, they don't reveal who the other capitals are, but it gives you a good starting point to see where your security measures are. Doing an assessment of your facilities is very important, but one of the other opportunities we had working with them, they brought in a very nice camera system, 32 megapixel system, and we were able to go through our facilities and map out via video the floor plans of the facilities and match that to the floor plans for the Capitol. And what that allows us to do is first responders, whether it be an active shooter, it could be a fire, it could be a structure collapse, any of those type of events, it allows a first responder who have never been in your building to pull up the floor plans on a tablet that we provide. You see the floor plan and there's small red dots that locate, and that's where the video links are. So when you click on the video link, it brings up the image of the space that you're getting ready to go into. And so it's a very useful tool. Again, it's free. So if anybody's interested in that, can get with me after the presentation and can kind of help you point you in the direction to do that. But that's something I think is very important. We did our Capitol, Supreme Court, Governor's Mansion, a lot of the state facilities in our 12-acre complex got that done, and that's just a smart way to approach that and use the technology to your advantage.
Again, a lot has to do with coordination and communication, and I have one individual in our office who is pretty much responsible for coordinating a lot of this activity. It's not one of the security guards, it's actually one of the assistant directors in my office. But he has training as a first responder, as a paramedic, and he thinks very well in this respect. He has a nice checklist that he has about what has to be done. But one of the things that we put together is to make sure that not all of us are in the same place, because there has to be somebody from building service to know where the power plant are, where the switches are for light, gas, water, whatever it be. We have, there's a radio in my office where I would communicate with emergency responders. We have, he would be at one location, I would be at another location. And one thing that we make sure is that, especially, well, this really only happens during session, the state police who have jurisdiction during that time, or in case of an emergency, they're off-site. And so they're not inside the building. There are state police making their rounds throughout the building, but the command center is away from there. It's in close vicinity. We don't tell anybody where it is. There's just very few of us who know where it is, and that's the communication center. So it's having that kind of preparation, walking through it at the beginning of every single session, and then maybe having a test run a month or two before session, like I said, a tabletop exercise. That has really gone a long way to making me and a lot of other people feel a little bit better. So it's that kind of preparation.
Great, thank you. And now we'd like to open it up to the audience. If you have a question, we welcome your questions, but please come to the microphone and give your name and your state. Wake up, everyone. Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank our panelists. And is it all right to leave a little early? Okay.